Joining us for more on the crisis in East Africa is Shannon Scribner, Humanitarian Policy Manager of the International Relief and Development Organization, Oxfam. She is currently leading the Humanitarian Policy team here in Washington. Shannon, welcome to In Focus.
Thank you for having me.
And now, of course, those stories from the Horn of Africa are really heart-rending. And we know that food is available, supplies are available. The problem has been how to get this food and these supplies to those affected. From what you're hearing right now, today, what is the progress on the ground?
So it's exactly right. There is food available, which is counterintuitive to having a famine in some parts of the Horn of Africa. But there is still a funding shortfall in order to buy that food that is available. So right now there are about 12 million people affected by this drought right now, living in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. And there's, in terms of the funds that have come in, it's about 46% funded right now in terms of the needs. And there's been a lot of pledges, but those pledges need to be then committed to funding that actually turns into action on the ground. And so we still have a funding shortfall in order to get that food into
look,
those
the
areas.
situation is dire. Everybody notices and realizes it's urgent. What do you think, in your sense, is preventing the quick action to avail those funds so that the people can be given the necessary aid that they need?
Right. I mean, part of it is the needs keep growing. So as we're catching up, the needs continue to extend. And so we're constantly chasing after getting food. And it's not just food, it's also nutrition, because when we have a drought and when we have famine conditions or food insecurity, disease is right behind. So we need more water and sanitation, we need more medical care, and then of course we need the food. And part of it is the coordination of making all of this happen.
And mentioning food and nutrition, you can't fail to think about the kids. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of children that are affected in all this crisis. What are some of their immediate needs? It may not be food, but they're in a situation that they need more things than just food.
So the children arriving right now in the refugee camps outside of Somalia, so in Ethiopia and Kenya, about 50% of the kids that we're seeing arriving in Ethiopia are severely malnourished. So 50% of these acute malnutrition rates are off the charts. So they need immediate therapeutic feeding. Some of them are so malnourished that we're not even able to provide that assistance to them. They're just nutritional value in terms of how the famine has hit them is just tremendous, but they also need medicine. So they're going to need vaccines. A lot of the children we're seeing have measles, and then there's cholera that we're starting to hit. So children are arriving, diarrhea. So even if you're doing the therapeutic feeding, the diarrhea is not allowing their bodies to absorb the nutrition.
Mm-hmm. And at some point, of course, security was a major concern. Many aid organizations were saying they cannot penetrate the country because of security reasons, Al-Shabaab and other groups there. How is it now? Is it any better?
So Somalia is one of the most difficult places to work because of the security dimension to it and because of the access issue as well. Oxfam is working through partners in South Central Somalia, so we're able to access communities, but through Somalis who are the ones on the ground negotiating the territory bit by bit. They're the ones who have the relationship with the community. So the needs are immense, especially in South Central Somalia, and there's been some efforts to lift some of the restrictions we've seen, particularly by the U.S. government. So we're hoping that will kind of ease the way for more access to be able to be granted, but it's still a difficult situation with many different armed groups, and it's not easy to access people.
Now we have people who are inside Somalia and others are crossing the border, for instance, to Kenya. Whose condition is worse, or who are getting better assistance?
Right now within Somalia, there's some assistance in Mogadishu, and there's also some assistance on the border of Ethiopia and Somalia. The World Food Program is providing assistance on the other side of Somalia, but they're doing it from the Ethiopia side. So we've seen some assistance beef up in South Central Somalia, but people are still fleeing, and we're having about 1,000 people a day go into Dadaab in Kenya, and about 300 people a day coming to the camps in Ethiopia, and those camps are overstretched.
But is there more help when they come across the border and become international refugees?
It depends on which camps they arrive in. In Dadaab, there are 3 camps. So 2 of the camps have a lot of assistance. Well, the 3 camps do, but they're extending services in the 3rd camp. So if people are arriving in some of the extended camps, there's not assistance there. So they're transporting them to the other camps. In Ethiopia, literally, the government is building the plane as they're flying it because they're opening camps up to keep up with the influx. So it's getting water and system sanitation set up in these camps and the food available, and it's a catch-up game.
Okay. Shannon, thanks very much for joining us today on In Focus. And that's Shannon Scribner, Humanitarian Policy Manager for Oxfam. And now, for more information on any of today's stories, please visit us online at voaafrica.com. You can also visit us on Facebook. Just search for In Focus.